Okay, and we begin. We have Melissa. Melissa, welcome to the podcast. Finally.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for being patient. The day has arrived.
Yes, fine. And as I was saying before we started the recording, your life is many, many books that could be written. So I'm going to start with a very, very simple question. Uh, who is Melissa and how would you describe yourself? Just a very simple question.
Ooh. Yeah, just a very small warm-up question there, Vinay. Thank you.
Yes.
Who is Melissa Indot? Today, because Melissa Indot is evolving in every moment. So today and right now, I am a fearlessly curious, disruptive empath.
Ooh. Wow. Okay. Brilliant. So that is today, and that's brilliant. Fearlessly curious, just empath and destructive. I don't know. Maybe instructive.
Disruptive empath.
Disruptive. I would say instructive as well.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Uh-huh.
maybe that's something you can add to it. So there's amazing work that you're doing right now, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But everything we are today is often based on our experiences in the past, right? So you've had some very pivotal experiences in your life, and you and I have chatted about this very briefly long time ago. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, you started your career in accounting and then did a lot of work in the music industry, and you're a bona fide Malaysian pop star. So tell us a little bit about that phase of your journey.
Sure. So yes, I started out as an accountant. And the reason why I ended up in accountancy is because I did what most of us do, which is follow the path of life that is actually put before us. And I believe that the world is very much, there's a system that the world functions on. So whereas when we're kids, when we're growing up, our strengths or our natural abilities are noticed at school, and then we're kind of streamed into a specific direction. So for me, it was maths, actually. I was really good at math. And as I got older, I excelled in maths. And it just seemed like the obvious route actually for me to go either into business, finance, or accounting, even
Right.
engineering, actually. But I was not very keen on sciences, and I ended up accountancy seemed like the obvious thing. But I had a side interest actually, which is my passion even today, and that is music.
Right.
But to follow a music career, and I am going to sort of pigeonhole myself because this is how I was brought up, being coming from a culturally a Southeast Asian background. I'm Malaysian born. Sort of the creative arts is not seen as a profession. It's not seen as
Yeah.
something reliable and structured. And so even though my parents were very supportive of my music, I mean, I studied piano till grade 8, and I had vocal training, and I was in the choir, and I did a lot of live performances even when I was growing up. It was never seen as a reliable source of income for a
Yeah.
career. So I was not really pushed in that direction formally.
Mm. Mm.
Um, and then I was your A student. I was a very good girl. I was complied. I was obedient. I still had that fearless curiosity and mischief. Um, and at 18, actually, I dropped out of university. So I ended up in accounting purely as a way to survive. I
Right.
left home in Malaysia. I started life as an 18-year-old in the UK.
Mm.
And I reached into my pocket of natural resources, and I thought, I'm good at maths. What can I do? Accounting's what I can do. I went out, I got a job as an accounts clerk. So
Wow.
I had no formal training. I literally just went on the fact that I found maths easy. And I started from the bottom, and I worked my way up over time. I had some beautiful, amazing, generous bosses who ended up being my mentors. And I started studying accountancy in addition to working. So I went to night school and studied with the
Right.
ACCA. And
Yeah.
at the peak of my career, let's say, I was actually doing all the work of a management accountant without the qualification. So I took it as far as I could, and then my boss would take over.
Right.
But I never actually completed my studies
Wow.
because
It's yeah,
I was
but
pursuing what my heart desired, which was music.
yeah, which is so interesting because that music piece and what you said about Southeast Asia, right? Now, I'm right now in Singapore, and uh, and largely in this part of the world, there's a lot of kids doing music, but it's always perceived as something that's a hobby, that's something, it's an additional skill and something that parents particularly can show off to others, say, hey, my child plays this instrument or performs as well. To think about it as profession, as income earning, sustaining, it's still very, very rare. And compared to when you were starting out till today, uh, you know, I it's starting to change, but maybe the pace could definitely increase there. But a question there, and so what was that pivotal point where you said, okay, time for me to park the accounting and let me go? Because you spent quite a bit of time in doing just music, doing working in the entertainment uh, sector, right? When did you make that full switch?
I made that full switch really in the early 2000s. So a little bit of backstory. The reason why I left home actually and I moved to the UK, and this
Mm,
is going to lean into the fearlessly curious, disruptive empath part of me,
right,
is because one, I basically had decided that I no longer wanted to live in the mold that was being created for me, meaning
mm,
meaning that life path that was put before me, right? Which is I'm a woman, I'm good at maths, I should go to university, I should study this, I should park my music. And there was a certain way that I was being molded. And that's normal for most of us, right? But there was a part of me that felt I no longer wanted to abandon who I was. I can say this now, I can use this language now, but at the time, it was just really me following my heart and
right,
disrupting the status quo, and being fearlessly curious. I wanted to go and explore the world. I wanted to go and explore other options of ways of living that was not the norm. So I've always felt like a misfit. I've never felt like I fitted in. And I fell in love. Love is one of the greatest fuels and motivations to shift. I
yes,
fell in love and I literally ran away. I ran away to the UK with my new partner at the time. And my
mm,
first partner actually was my first long-term relationship. And that's what threw me into this life. So I lived in the
right,
UK many years. I had, like I said, I was in accountancy. I was pursuing my music dream on the side. And actually, I had a short career here in the UK. There's a national lottery, and there used to be a program every week where they would draw the numbers and they would have a celebrity or they have an artist perform
right.
in front of a live audience, televised audience of 12 to 14 million people. And I was on it with my
Oh,
band,
wow.
with my duo.
Oh,
Yeah. So it's probably one of my really amazing sort of achievements in my life is that I performed in front of a live television audience of about 14 million people. That was incredible. It was the week after Natalie Imbruglia launched her single Torn. So this is back in the
wow.
90s.
Wow. And I hope there's videos of it on YouTube somewhere. Are there?
I think if you'll definitely find, yeah, if I have a Melissa Indot channel on YouTube, there is something there from back then. You won't recognize me. I was about 23.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Um, and it was an incredible time, it was just around the time when the Spice Girls was about to launch. So
Right.
being a woman in the music industry, which is very male dominated at the time, but more so because my bandmate and I, who was actually my partner also at the time,
Right.
we are both Southeast Asian looking. So we looked like nothing else out there. But
So,
actually, that was Go ahead. Sorry.
Right. No, so sorry, sorry to interrupt, but I made a faux pas when you said disruptive earlier. I said destructive, but actually, I'm going to stick with that because you destroyed some of the stereotypes that we have as
Uh-huh.
well, right? So, because
Yeah.
that's what you said, right? You came in and did all that. And then
Yeah.
so that was amazing. So you show up on television, you do that, amazing opportunity. And then if I'm not mistaken, you go to Malaysia and do pop music
Hmm.
there for a while. Is that?
Yeah. So I moved back because actually we couldn't get any traction. The truth is, Vinay, even though you say that we would we destroyed any stereotypes, it was way too early at the time, and
Yeah.
we were too different. The very thing that I thought was a unique selling point for us, which was we look different, and of course
Mm,
we look at the what percentage of the population of the world looks like us
yeah.
is a very big percentage, right? But without going into the whole political uh, angle of the world and how um, different cultures are
Yeah.
elevated and suppressed, it that wasn't going to happen for us. We were women. We were. I'm just going to say it. We were not white. We were not black. We didn't
Mm,
fit in. Okay,
right.
and excuse me if I'm not using the right languaging. I'm just going to speak in flow. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
didn't get any traction beyond that. We did. We were in the papers, and there was a little bit of a buzz, but for something like this, you need a big machinery behind you. So
Right.
that was heartbreaking. That was a dream that felt like never took off. And so I actually retired from the business. And
Oh.
many years later, after retiring from the music business and my relationship ended, it felt
Mm,
like it was, and it was, I was about to turn 30. So it was a transitional phase of my life. I decided it was time to move back to Malaysia. I moved back to
mm.
Malaysia for a holiday. I was like, my God, what am I missing out on? The life here in Asia is phenomenal. Now is a great time for me to move back. So I moved back. I
Right.
decided to live in Malaysia. I took a 6 month sabbatical. Actually, I think it was 9 months by the time I got through it. And during that time, I used to go to these open mic sessions at various places, at a place called Bar Blonde, actually, in Jalan Sultan Ismail. And they had open mics. I would just go and sing for fun.
Right.
And for 1 month, I actually won the open mic session. And the
Oh, wow.
prize was you get to do a gig with a house band. So I did that. And that got my blood going again for music.
Ah,
And my sister, who's instrumental in this, said, "Look, why don't you just go back into music again?" And my whole family pulled together to support me. I started writing again. And not long after that, I wrote and recorded and released my first debut album, well, my debut album,
right.
English language debut album in Malaysia.
Mm.
And wow, it won an industry award, so it's the equivalent to our Grammys in Malaysia. I got
Oh, wow.
best English album, and off the back of that, I had a lot of success, a lot of work from that, and I was living the
Mm.
dream, living the dream,
Oh, wow.
as a pop star,
And it's interesting. So you brought the business angle, right? So lo and behold, the circle comes back, and you brought a little bit of your business acumen and your accounting skills, and started a production company as well. Did you?
Well,
Yeah.
actually, that was all about. I was very spoiled. My sister managed me. I actually got to
Ah,
be a total creative and an artist. But what I come to realize later in life, and this is something that I'm very passionate about now, and how I combine what I do, music, into what I do now, is I realize that music is a is a very powerful force, and it is undervalued, and it's there's such a huge dichotomy of pay, okay,
mm,
of that comes with it. You're either a massively successful artist or you're a struggling musician. But as musicians and artists, all creatives, we're healers.
right.
Music is the language of the soul, and music speaks where words fail.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's very powerful. And so when I say disruptive empath, the empath part comes from being a highly emotional person and storytelling through music.
Mm,
And that's what great artists do. That's what the greatest artists do.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And music is the truly the one and only universal language, right?
yeah.
is absolutely amazing. Something that you started to talk about, the healing, the emotional element of it. And
Mm,
one of the things that you're doing now is something that I'm fascinated by. And you did the whole aspect about combining music and healing and coaching people through that and
mhm.
using a lot of different methodologies, etc. So how did you pivot to that? I mean, what was because today you're a coach, you're pretty well known, you're doing some amazing work around emotional healing. Uh, so you had the music stuff going, it was going reasonably well, going really well. And
Really
then
well.
what made you add that element to your portfolio of work?
Well, from being a recording artist and singing and writing, I transitioned to DJing. And so
Yeah,
that meant that I started to consciously playlist musical journeys because that's what DJs do. They take you on
yeah.
a musical journey through emotions. They take you from a low, they build the energy up to a high, and then they bring you back down. And life basically served me a couple of incredible lessons and pivots. The first being my father was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, stage 2B. And, that was it was a cancer that we felt that we could navigate with him with ease, actually. But his treatment impacted him in a very big way. And to be very honest, within 4 or 5 months of his diagnosis and his treatment, my father passed away.
Oh,
And that journey was a very rapid journey and very intense. It was a pivotal journey for me. I ended up being his sort of his primary caregiver,
right.
um, looking over his meds and seeing his deterioration and wanting to get involved in sort of his mindset and his emotional presence. And when you watch someone as
Yeah.
as important as your parent go through that. And my father has always been such a rock in our lives, very discerning, very full of integrity, very grounded, very rooted, very wise, right? Very
Mm,
present. And watching him deteriorate was heartbreaking. And so when my father passed on, I really didn't have much opportunity to grieve because, well, that's probably the first big loss I've had in my life. My career was coming to a natural close in the music business.
right.
And my mother, who has known my dad since she was 10 or 12, had
Mm,
lost her life partner. And so my focus went to her. And so I never really had space to grieve for myself. And during that period of being a support for my mom, trying to keep my career together, trying to process my own loss, I was drinking a lot,
mm,
and then I would take drugs occasionally, to kind of escape my worries, my heartache, my grief. And over the months that continued, what I wasn't aware of was that I was becoming an addict. And
right.
I have a very radical, for some people, a radical opinion or point of view about addiction. And we are conditioned to believe that addiction is something that happens when we take a certain amount often. But the truth is, I truly believe we're all addicts. If you have a glass of wine a day and you think that's okay, it is okay. But
Well,
when you stop, when you don't have a drink for one day and
and
you notice a change in your mood, that is a
yeah,
sign that you have an addiction. We're addicted to our
yeah.
phones, we're addicted to sugar. Anyway, so back to me, I actually was becoming a severe addict, and I was very high functioning. So I was drinking a lot. My drug intake was increasing, and the sort of class level of drugs I was taking was also getting more intense. But this
Mm,
was all undercover. Nobody knew.
right.
Nobody knew. Like I mentioned, I was high functioning. And um, my 1 year after that, I met my soul partner. And the year after that, my soul partner passed away.
Oh,
So she was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I mean, this all went very quickly. I became her primary caregiver. And within a year of knowing her, she passed on. So within
mm,
2 years, I lost two people who were so important to me. And at that point, I felt like the the carpet, the rug had been pulled from beneath my feet. And I asked the proverbial question, why am I here? Like, what is
Right.
the point of this, of being here, right? If we're just going to live a cookie cutter life,
Mm.
strive to earn money to pay bills and to save up for the rainy day that might never come, and park our dreams at the side in order to build wealth and play safe, when we may never get to that point where we actually get to live our dreams because we're so busy working and focusing on the
Yeah.
things we think we should do rather than live the life we desire. And I learned this as I accompanied more my partner as she was dying, because she was young.
Mm.
When we were having these conversations, and so I basically stopped everything that I was doing, a little bit like Eat, Pray, Love. I packed my bags and I just went, I left.
Yeah.
And I deep dived into studying, reading, questioning myself. I studied lots of different things, shamanic wisdom. I took on mentors and coaches and just questioned everything. I became fearlessly curious. And I opened my heart to all my pain, all my grief. And it was then that I realized that I had been functioning as an addict.
Mm. Wow. I mean, first of all, what a uh, up and down, I mean, journey and traumatic journey. And what stands out for me from everything you've shared, and first of all, thank you so much for sharing that. What stands out is how reflective you were through through that process that you went through, right? Because a lot of times people go through various episodes or events in their life, and they don't necessarily learn much from it. And that fearlessly curious piece, an intensely curious person that you are, you sought out mentors. I got a sense that you took a lot of moments of reflection during all of those times. Would
Mm.
that be correct? Because you just come across as
Yes.
somebody who's a very reflective person, and just be in the present moment as well, right? Just experience all of that moment. Uh,
Yeah, and,
so
and
so
that was learned, Vinay.
yeah.
We're actually conditioned to be busy and to fill space up. But these two events that happened forced me into a corner,
Yeah.
which was, yeah, like, why am I, like, literally, why am I here? What is the point of all this? And so that's when I started questioning. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the work that you're doing about with healing and connecting music and everything that you're doing really started with self. If you think, if you can't work with others to heal and help them through it
Hmm.
if you haven't been through it
Hmm.
yourself, and you
Absolutely.
recognize some of that perspective. Uh,
Yeah.
so how did you then? So you came out at the end of it very traumatic. To you made it sound so seamless and with ease of words that you just described it, but the emotions that were going through it must have been one heck of a roller coaster.
Uh,
Wow.
Totally. I mean, you have the five stages of grief that I definitely recognize. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, I think her name is.
Yeah,
She wrote a
correct.
book about that. And there's avoidance, there's anger, there's denial, and I went through all of them.
Mm.
And
And
during
twice, and
my
twice, and
and
twice.
twice and three times, thrice over and over again. Plus, I was
Yeah.
navigating addiction. So I was like, okay, you know what? I actually made life all about me. I shut
Mm.
down everything outside of myself. I claimed all the space in my life for me. I lived how some people might say selfishly. Was I privileged enough to do that? You could say, yes, I'm privileged. But at the
Mm.
same time, to me, there was no risk. I literally just lived off whatever I had because there was more to my life than money, I realized. Because all the money in the world is not going to buy you your health. It's not going
Right.
to buy somebody back after they've passed or buy them from terminal cancer. So I invested everything that I had very mindfully into myself, into learning about myself. And much so,
Mm.
I started my sobriety journey. I did it on my own. I don't recommend it for anyone out there. If you have the opportunity to go into rehab, do that. Get the support you need, have therapy. I actually didn't do that. I did it on my own. I did it quietly. people had no idea I was even an addict because I was high functioning. And I discovered this for myself. I weaned myself off. And what I used was music,
Mm,
fierce discipline, a very, very deep and committed spiritual practice, which started with yoga, actually. So to
yeah.
drop into my body and move and to meditate and move with yoga every single day. I started with 30 days and then it went to 60 days and then 90 days. And I continued that. I did cold turkey. I stopped drugs and alcohol just overnight. And it was tough.
Yeah.
And retrospectively, I see that, and this to answer your question, why is it I use music now as part of my healing and coaching? Is because what carried me through that journey of the emotions, extreme emotions, was music. I started to curate my own playlists that helped me sit in these difficult emotions,
Mm,
not just sit, but actually surf them,
wow.
ride through the emotions, get out of my head and just feel whatever it is I needed to feel without having to explain, without having to analyze. It was almost like having this best friend who would sit with me, who knew exactly what I was going through, who would talk to me in the language that I needed, that would hold me in the way that I needed.
Wow.
Um, and all through music, because that's what music does. It really
Yeah.
speaks to the soul.
So it's the grounding and the interest in music right from childhood that sort of uh, helped you through this. But I'm very
Yes.
curious. You something you said just about a minute ago. You decided to do this on your own. You know, you didn't go through the support group, rehab,
Mm-hmm.
any of that. And it takes a very it takes a very unique sense of discipline and focus to be able to be successfully do it on your own, right? Which fortunately you were. But why? I'm just curious. Why did you choose to go
Yeah.
on your own?
I'm so grateful that you're asking me this question because I will very proudly say I did it because I was ashamed.
Mm,
And I say proudly say it because I think it's really powerful when we can honor our vulnerabilities. When we honor our vulnerabilities, that in and of itself becomes a power. So I was ashamed. I was ashamed that anyone would know that I was an addict. There was a lot of shame around believing, identifying as that. And I didn't want anybody to know. And it meant exposing myself. It meant exposing myself at my weakest. That's
right.
why I did it on my own. My journey might have been a lot less hard. I say
Yeah.
less hard, not easy, less hard.
Yeah. No,
It
that's
might have been faster
yeah.
if I had the support of therapists and coaches for my sobriety journey. But what I
Mm,
did was I had mentors and coaches for my self awareness and spiritual development and kept my
mm,
addiction a secret, my sobriety
yeah.
journey a secret until I was fully sober. And now I'm very open about that. I run sobriety, not challenges, but prompts every year in January because of what is typically dry January. And I talk
Right.
about addiction. I talk about the narratives around that and the conditioning around that and the shame around that and how it's actually okay to be able to acknowledge it because that is the beginning of any healing journey is to be able to acknowledge your vulnerability.
Yeah.
Um,
And would it be fair to say that because you were a very high functioning addict, it was somewhat easier for you to hide that away and have people not notice it as well?
yes,
Because
absolutely.
if you were not as high functioning, I'm sure interventions and friends and others would step in because they'd notice it. Uh,
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. And being high functioning meant I was also hyper independent, which in and of itself is not healthy, right? Because
yeah,
as
yeah,
humans, we thrive on connection. And so now I've moved to the other end of the scale. I'm all about connection. I'm all about building community. I'm all about acknowledging and encouraging reaching out for support.
mm,
And speaking about shame, actually, it's the
yeah,
lowest frequency of emotion. And this is why music is powerful because it can raise our vibration, our frequency, just by listening to music. We are frequency itself. If you think
correct.
about it from a scientific perspective, we're made of atoms atoms are made of a nucleus, protons, and electrons that are vibrating. We are vibration itself. So our emotions are all about frequency, and we can shift that frequency by
Right.
listening to music. Because how many times have you tried to talk yourself out of something? But if you're not feeling it,
Feeling it.
it's
Yes,
not going to
correct.
work.
Yeah.
So that's how
So,
music
so,
can come into that.
so that's a really fascinating and a highly emotional journey you've been on. And you can see the grounding for all the work that you do today. So tell our listeners, what is it that you do today? What is it that keeps you busy and more important than busy, making an impact, which is and adding value to so many of us.
I think what I'm passionate about is being the person that I needed during my hardest time. So I've always identified as a misfit, not fitting in. I never understood a lot of the labels that we were given as we're growing up. Like, boys should be with girls, boys should wear red. There's certain sports that are encouraged for boys
Yeah.
and not for girls. Certain behaviors. I never really understood that. And nobody could really explain it to me. And so oh, I call myself a self-awareness and emotional healing coach and mentor.
Mm.
And what that means is I support and guide people who have basically had enough of complying. They've had
Mm.
enough of struggling to fit in. And the thing is, many people are not even aware that they're struggling. They think there's something wrong with them because they can't fit in. So if you're one of these people who are actually, you have everything in your life, you feel you
Yeah.
have it all, and yet you still feel like something is missing, it's because you're not living to your specific purpose. You're not living the way you are meant to live. You are
Mm.
abandoning yourself to fit in and to belong. So I help people shift from belonging to a group
Okay.
that's external
Mm.
to them to becoming the
Yeah.
person that they're born to be. And that involves shifting mindset, shifting perspectives, addressing trauma, seeing what traumas you have that are blocking you from living your
Mm.
fullest potential. And normalizing talking about trauma, normalizing talking about healing. Growth, healing is part of the growth and development journey. And really supporting people to be themselves, because that's our purpose. I truly believe that our purpose, each and every one of us, is to be you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people
Yeah.
kind of go, what? And it's like, yeah, because if you think about it, the way our systems are created is to condition you to be less of who you are and more of someone you're not.
Yeah. The compliance, right? Comply with the norms. And we don't necessarily. So, what I loved what you just said, right? One is normalizing even the conversation around this, just
Yeah.
having what individual identity means as well. Well, question for you there. How do you believe we have become as a society? Are we more, has the range of, how to articulate, right? There used to be a very narrow spectrum of what was normal, and anything outside of that was you're the outlier, you're the exception,
Yeah.
you're the character outside. Uh, would you believe that that range is wider, has increased, there's more room for people there, or is the social pressures, the behavioral expectations as rigid as it used to be? What's your thought around it?
I think it's rigid in a different way. I think, yes, the labels, it's much wider now. All
Mm.
right. It's definitely much wider now, but we're still compartmentalizing, we're still pigeonholing ourselves. There is a growth there though, because it's more than this or that. Right now, there's a bit more of a menu, let's just say. I think what's important with self-awareness is to note that we have these labels because we have to give a name to how we identify ourselves. Okay.
Mm.
When with self-awareness, we can ensure that these labels don't become limits, right? That these words, these labels that give us a sense of belonging don't exclude other people. We
Right.
all want to be included, but in our hyper focus to feel like we belong and we're included, the other side of that is that are we excluding other people?
Others. Yeah.
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 So
Yeah, we have all of these wonderful expressions that go back, decades, if not longer, live and let live, and, stuff like
yeah,
that. Uh, uh, we've really practiced that uh, intentionally, because a lot of our, and I, to what you just said, a lot of our perceptions that we create, or all of that, is sometimes unintentional, and we're just pressuring people, putting them in
mm,
those boxes, labeling them. I'm not sure how many of them are walking around saying, no, you cannot do this. It's more, uh, it's the unsaid behaviors, if that makes sense.
yes. And actually the people who are more vocal about it are easier to deal with.
Mm,
It's the work now, and DEI comes into this, right? The work now is educating. And I'm going to say people need to educate themselves. We need to be more aware and be curious about how we can change the way we see the world. Because at the end of the day, we see the world but based on how we identify ourselves. So we live in a
right,
heteronormative world. Okay, that is the world over because it's been built in polarity, this or that, man, woman, okay, good, bad. But the world has evolved beyond that. So if everyone listening to this amazing series, right, Vinay, Happy Shiny People, right? My prompt to you would be, can you get curious and see where your blind spots are in the world that you
right.
live in the way that you perceive the world, and educate yourself? So if you don't know what heteronormative is, Google it. We've got Google. There's no excuses anymore. Okay.
Right.
Look at what genders are out there. Look at the different labels of genders. Ask yourself, am I the sort of person who goes, oh, that's not on me, I don't need to know about it?
Mm,
What is your stand on sexuality? What is your stand on race, culture? What is your stand on colonialism? Okay. What is your stand when you see someone being abused on the street or being spoken to unkindly? It starts there, but
right, correct.
it's about like, how much do you care? What is it? Where is your limit? Where are you
Mm,
limited by what you see in the way that you speak? I
yeah,
had
no, that,
someone, just very briefly, I had someone ask me to explain to them what pansexuality meant. Now, in a
mm,
recent post in LinkedIn, I'd written about how excited I was that I felt finally I had a label when I discovered the word pansexual, which basically means you fall in love with the person, irrelevant of their gender. Okay.
mm,
And I had someone ask me what that meant. So I explained it to them. And then they cracked this joke, which is, oh, something along the lines of, oh, you're kind of greedy, right? So anything goes for you, along those lines. And I immediately said, listen, that's actually not funny and it's quite inappropriate. And I know that
mm.
many people around me thought, oh, come on, have a sense of humor. But you see, that is an example of how we can minimize someone's experience when we laugh at a claim of
Did
belonging, a
we
sense of
lose
belonging.
Melissa, or did we lose me?
Sorry, I'm here. Can you
Mm.
hear me?
S- Yeah, yeah, we lost you for a second. I don't know if it was just me. Ramanat, are you
Okay.
there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes,
Uh,
yes. I think Vinay, we lost you for a bit. Yeah.
oh, it was me.
I'm so
Okay.
sorry. What was?
Yep.
No, no, no. So as long as we got you, Melissa, I don't matter as much.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
No, okay.
Uh,
So,
okay, perfect. So we,
Ramona, you got that? Okay.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, we did. Yeah.
So,
Yes.
okay, so let's continue. So, that's really interesting, right? With the labels and all of that. And uh, it takes, I won't use, for lack of a better term, assertiveness. It takes a little bit of courage, or what is considered as a perceived courage, to voice saying, hey, this is not even appropriate in this conversation. And that's important. But I want to come back to something that you said a couple of minutes ago. Uh, Stay curious. So, in your practice, how much of people who come to you for the coaching come from an emotional state or whatever it might be, frustration, they've had it,
Mm.
or they're at some negative emotional state, or do they come from a position of discovery? I mean, what brings people there to discover themselves? What takes them
It's
to that point
suffering,
where they say suffering? Yeah.
some
I do.
level of suffering. It's either frustration,
Mm,
like not getting anywhere, or they're not being seen, not being heard,
right.
not being recognized, not being appreciated,
Mm,
or they are, so the frustration comes from being stuck, right? Stuck in a cycle over and over again. And often it's wanting to make a change, but not knowing how, or being
yeah.
afraid of what they might lose. But there's something burning desire within them that's telling them they need to make that change. And the suffering, the settling, they're
Yeah.
unable to settle anymore.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. And I didn't want to use the word suffering because uh,
It is.
I just find it a shame that people become curious or go through that self-discovery uh, out of necessity rather than a need, just a positive need to grow and develop.
Hmm.
But
Sure.
maybe there's that old adage, right? Through adversity comes greatest amount of growth. So
Yeah. I mean, I also used to myself struggle with that kind of languaging. I'm like, surely we don't have to suffer to grow and learn.
yeah,
But as I study more and I live more, and as I get to work with more people and actually just spend more time in conversation with people, connecting, I realize that that is the human experience. And we are here to experience life. Again, it's a
yeah,
label. Pain is a label.
yeah,
Struggle is just a
correct.
label. What if I just call it resistance? What if I just call it conflict?
Mm,
Right? What if I call it discomfort? The
yeah,
discomfort is there. The resistance is there. It's telling me something. I keep going this way, but it's hurting me. So there's a lesson there. So I help
yeah,
people
that's
find a
true.
purpose to their pain.
Mm, yeah, and find a way to move in directions that they may not even have thought of, or because
Yes, and yes,
yeah,
and it's a direction that is in alignment with them.
them
It is
with them.
what's right by them.
Yeah.
I teach people how to be selfish, basically, Vinay. I teach them to put themselves first, because
that's good.
when we are joyful, when we are fulfilled, we are in divine service, because then we can share that knowledge, share that joy, share that fulfillment.
Well, I must say I like the term that you use of life transformation, healing, rather than calling oneself a coach all about selfishness. That may not necessarily again that label creates different
I
perceptions in
know.
people's minds, right? As
Yeah,
well.
and that's what's keeping us constantly
Uh,
abandoning ourselves, is that we feel we have to put everything else first.
yeah.
Um, so
So
selfish
where
with good intention.
yes, correct. And selfish to make ourselves move in the right direction and contribute in whatever way that we see
Yes,
best. I think that's
yes,
also very important. The purpose aspect that you talked about. So where do you see
yes.
yourself in the next 2 to 3 years? What do you see yourself doing? Do
I
you,
see myself continuing to live this incredible life that I have not just been blessed with, but I've had the opportunity to transform. And
Mhm.
most importantly, continuing to, I aim to release more music this year, maybe end of this year. So coming
Oh
back
wow.
into the music again and
Yay.
releasing music that's very much, yeah, purposeful, coming from a place of healing and transformation and fearless curiosity and authenticity. It's all about like that whole growth journey now coming through in the
Brilliant.
music,
That is
and
so
being able to
brilliant.
serve
That
more
is so
people, serve as one-on-one, serve in groups, serve in community, as I'm building my online community.
yeah. So, you know, we will definitely keep our ears open for the music you release. But like I said in the beginning, and I said offline, uh, it's time for you to write a book, Melissa. There is power to
Okay,
the word.
okay, Vinay.
So you need to get to
Okay,
that
thank you.
item on your bucket list, and
Okay.
and there might be multiple volumes of that book, right? Volume one, phase one of your life, phase two. So there's plenty there. It's a great reflective process. Question, since I've taken way too much of your time already. So we have two standard questions we ask all our guests. Since I mentioned the book, we have a section called RWL, which is what recommendations do you want to make for our listeners to read, watch, or listen to that will make them a little bit more aware of the kind of work that you do, or even something that just interests you.
Okay. Read would be The Book of Woman by Osho.
Yeah.
Read. Watch. Watch has got to be. I got to put that park the watch bit. Actually, no, I've got a good one. To watch. Go to my YouTube channel and watch
Yes.
my meditation videos.
Brilliant. Excellent.
I have meditation videos that were born out of poetry that I wrote during that period I shared in this podcast of my deep reflection, self-reflection. I wrote poems and I turned them into meditations, and they're visual meditations. Head on to my YouTube channel for that, for watch and for listen.
Your music.
Listen to this podcast, Shiny Happy People Podcast. Come on.
Thank you.
I mean,
thank you for that plug. And of course, to your music as well, and the upcoming music end of the year. So there's plenty there on everyone's list. So we are the Shiny Happy People Podcast. So my second question is, actually, it's going to be very interesting to hear from you, because you went through so many, such a roller coaster of emotions and events and traumas and all of that. What were your rituals, or how did you find uh, y your way to stay positive, to wake up in the morning and say, "Yeah, I'm going to go." What is it that you do to maintain positivity?
I honor how I feel. That would be the first answer. So in terms of ritual, let me start with a ritual. In the morning, I wake up and I meditate one of three ways. Okay, it's not a fixed way. I pray. And in my prayer, I unashamedly ask for what it is that I feel in my heart I need in the day. I ask. Then I say thank you. So either I pray or I recite mantra.
Right.
And the mantra is Sanskrit mantra. There are a couple that I recite. I can't think of the names. Sangamangale is one off the top of my head. If you're interested, any of you can just message me. I'll send it to you. And the third way is I breathe. I just focus on my breath, clearing my lungs in the morning. On a general overall basis, in order, if I'm having a bad day or I wake up feeling just not myself, as I said, I just honor my emotions. And how I honor my emotions is I have a playlist for all sorts of different things. And I will sit in my discomfort. Once upon a time, I would get a drink. I would go to all my strategies to avoid how I'm feeling. Now I realize my power is through and beyond my feeling. But the only way I can get there is to feel it, ride the wave of the emotion. And I use music for that. So I listen to music. I cry if I need to. I scream if I need to. I dance if I need to. Run, punch, all to music.
Brilliant.
And help me get out of my head. Yeah.
Okay, here's something else I'm going to suggest that you publish, Melissa.
Yeah,
Your playlists for different moods.
Yeah, they're all on my Spotify. They're
Oh,
all
they
on my
are?
Spotify. Head on over there.
Oh, okay. Awesome, folks. There you have it. Some awesome resources for Melissa. And I'm going to go check out all her different playlists as well. Thank you so much for being on this podcast, Melissa. It's been an amazing pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay. Thank you for having me.
Cheers. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Pause.